unmanned vehicle is about to meet its fate. The ground control platform is suddenly locked up, causing the plane's engine to shut down. On loss of its engine, the drone attempts to conserve power by shutting off its electrical systems. It descends, relinquishes, awaits commands. No commands come. Operators have completely lost contact. The plane floats about the desert night, abandoned, aimless, and invisible. The out-of-control and powerless drone then dives into an area of upscale homes just north of the US-Mexico border. Residents of the neighborhood, sleeping quietly amid the sounds of the late morning light, are abruptly awakened by the plane's colliding might. Having slammed into the backyard of a large house, the renegade, precision-driven machine readily disrupts the suburban dream. As it lays tangled in the desert scrub brush and softly blowing sand, neighbors run to their phones. Their lights come on, they run outside their homes. The drone diminishes, but everything around it amplifies. Its connecting capabilities have been disabled, but other connectivities arise. Phones are dialed, conversations begun, explanations set into motion. The routines of the neighborhood are destabilized, but new gatherings are catalyzed, new actors summoned. A twisted geometry of spilt forms and unmasked roles, of networks sought and broken, the drone now offers itself to salvage a continuation. It's a curious sight, this downed drone. Smoldering in a cloud of smoke and dirt. Among the component parts that were dislodged by the slam to earth, there's little trace of human presence. In place of a cabin where pilots, sitting among angular consoles, worn seats, and molded door panels, work the controls that are sculpted around them, there's only a bulbous mass teeming with hardware and data flows. The violent spray of components, machine parts, fluids, and lost data that's released by the crash contains few shards of glass, for there are no windows that line its dense hollow and no monitors within its confines. There are only the tiny portals of sensors peering outside under its underbelly, sucking in data from the ground below. The event of the crash, the drone is destabilized, its parts dislodged. Beneath its broken coverings, we glimpse its inner workings, normally concealed. The operations necessary to compose it become newly revealed. We see what the drone is, but what it is always leads us elsewhere. It's a matter of which line to follow, which path to pursue, and the method used. When drones crash, they provide a bounty of available information and parts. Their databases become vulnerable to access, their components susceptible to recirculation and retooling. They scatter into renegade agencies, renegade systems of meaning. In order to prevent this, every drone crash involves a recovery operation, an attempt at consolidation, stabilization. Forms are assembled, concepts, narratives. The damage official agencies try to contain or maneuver the art of taking claim. There's plenty of room for evasion because drone operations fall into the gray areas between private companies and governments, or between governments, or between agencies. But people talk. The crash is an event that cannot be contained. Drones plunge into the public arena, and conversations gather around, weaving through all of the actors that the crash helps assemble, actors that are compelled to describe it, convey it, attest to its status, witnesses at the scene, personnel at the workplace, gathered friends at social settings. Conversations intersect with other conversations. They spin off new threads, merge into existing ones, or fade away entirely. They rise and fall, grow hot and cold, scale up and down, in accordance with the fears and desires, beliefs and imaginations of the people by whom they are told. They might stabilize into stories, some enduring, some vanishing by sunrise. They might produce new images and dreams, rearrange or reaffirm existing routines. Which story to invest in? Stories develop coherence, weaving together disparate parts into a whole, but they also create separation where there was none. It's not always clear which came first, the story or the event. The story, the event, the plane, they're all composed of actors, agitated in the aftermath of the crash. Actors become newly available in their circulations and attachments. Actors cultivating stabilization and endurance, recovery and recurrence, relevance, influence, and intimacy.
Wing 339, chase by frequency 135.15. 339, 3515. 1613 to set up pilot's discussion, maintain 14,000, Tucson altimeter 299
I listen for reports, status updates. I listen for stories, tales of the drone's fate, news channels, websites, bars, truck stops, forums, cafes. I follow leads for drone sightings along the borderlands, hoping to find a crash. Last week there was a confirmed sighting, reported deep in the Chihuahuan Desert, just over the state line. It was right near where my own plane once crashed. I survived, but my co-pilot did not. They say the fault was not my own, that it was located in the machine, not in me. I want to believe it, but I think it's somewhere else. Or it's in me, but I'm somewhere else. So I raced to this place. By the time I got there, nothing. The military is very good at recovering its crashed drones. Some drones in testing stages are this small. Governments and corporations won't admit that they exist, but people see them and report them. Drones already come in such a wide range of sizes. That's one of the reasons why the process of developing regulations for them has been so slow. They crash so often, they threaten safety everywhere. You can imagine a tiny drone like the Wasp malfunctioning or wavering off course, crashing not into a backyard, but into a bedroom. Some drones have flight patterns that are abnormal, uncanny. They hover in the sky and then just vanish, like quivering projections of our unease, the monsters we try but cannot banish. Some drones, stories become legend, drone crash lore. Some become part of ecologies of suspicion, secret military projects, of government cover-ups and conspiracies, of alien forces. Some even believe that a secret high-end drone technology was created by reverse engineering that crashed flying saucer near Roswell. Science fiction? You have to judge for yourself. It's a small step from the unmanned system to the out-of-body experience. Domestic abduction to the alien one. We don't know how accurate a drone story might be. It can be a false specter, lawless, renegade, genuine news item, or an outright charade. Drones are staged, decked out in nationalistic finery, commanded to act in the service of ideals. Drone demos and downings, they become artillery in the wars of attention. They help bolster public support, consolidate allegiance. Yes. No. Well, absurd, perhaps? Obvious tricksterism? Well, it's easy to focus on those details that affirm your worldview and ignore those that don't. It's easy to overlook obvious connections or forge entirely new ones. One way or another, though, you have to look. Drones are curious, kick-ass, cute. There's no denying the allure. They embody mystical illumination and real testimony. The wavering light of mystery, the harsh precision target glare, the flickering transmission and the transcendent stare, anxieties of invasion, pleasures of intrigue, fears of our human limits, desires of our transcendence, the nightmare and the dream. I dream of the sublime drone striking, the failed one being struck, the exultant drone that gleams against the clear blue sky, and the failed one that explodes in a spray of parts. Drones at home, drones geared for the everyday viewer, primed for disaster, of pleasurable violence transmitted on private screens, sites where drone games are played and drone missions seen. Drones slamming into political headquarters, plummeting the vacant train near borders, ditching the rocky countryside, plummeting the vacant train, vanishing the desolate regions, plummeting the vacant territories, cannonballing in the coast off Spain, rolling with scrub brush in the rough Nevada terrain. Italian Air Force discovering one of its down drones floating along the surface of the Adriatic Sea. Its body glistening in the sunlight like the bleached skin of a whale. Ground control operators have suddenly lost control of an armed Reaper flying a combat mission over Afghanistan. A manned U.S. Air Force fighter is called in to shoot down the renegade drone before it flies in the edge of Afghan airspace. In the world of robotic warfare, human pilots are still good for something. Shooting down wayward drones. Tension builds. Disciplined manned against chaotic unmanned. But the fighter plane arrives too late. The unseat Reaper, speeding headlong into its own future, crashes into the side of a mountain. Abstracted in a shower of engine oil, lost data, crushed composites and engine fumes, its dissipating fuselage drops. Amplified in a rush of sensation and adrenaline, its absorbing body elevates. I'm conducting an investigation, piloting a recovery operation. I'm looking for the fault, the truth of the matter, the cause of the disaster. My method, it's not conventional. I like to listen to the unruly supplements to the situation, accommodate its turbulent underpinnings. I like to cultivate the excess that disrupts the example, the turbulent underpinnings. Senseless underpinnings of the sensible. It's a risky approach. There's always the danger of taking the mistaken path, the wrong explanation, the wrong culprit. You can lose track. You lose contact. Loss of contact can lead to a loss of control. The investigation goes renegade, it plummets to earth, along with your status, ridiculed, weak, bookish, unmanly. Could be true. This pilot at some point lost control, a loss of control that's likely due to a loss of contact with the plane. Loss of contact, loss of control. The plane goes renegade, it plummets to earth. Loss of contact or control can result from many things. It can result from pilot error, systems failure, mechanical malfunction, or software glitch. The drone can be cut off by an atmospheric disturbance. Bad weather can bring it down. It can be cut down by an enemy hack, a hostile interception from the ground. Human error can always be blamed. Depends on how far down you go. Even algorithms are results of human decisions. There are multiple scales and locations at which the fault could occur, multiple places from which the drone could have been undone. I'll need to zero in on one. Hopefully it's the right one, and I'll prove myself. A ground control station like this one might require a flight team of 4. A pilot like me is the chief person responsible and flies the plane. The sensor operator manipulates cameras and detection devices. Flight engineer monitors the status of the aircraft. A mission monitor receives and responds to information requests. My display contains navigational data. Another display contains technical data. Another one contains image data, what the drone sees. The information allows me to navigate the plane comes from GPS signals and other locational data downloaded by satellite transmission. We're connected to the plane by two-way data links. A command is sent encrypted by fiber optic overseas cable or satellite and takes about 3 seconds to reach the plane. Data links connect us, the plane, and other actors at bases and units around the world. The drone's video and sensor feeds are sent to command centers, intelligence teams, and commanders and troops on the ground. Most of the operations necessary to fly the plane are algorithmic in nature. Humans, we're embedded in the system, but we're not really aware of the calculations. We don't know all the operations. It's not that we're out of the loop. We're embedded in a shared system, a concert of many different types of actors: human, mechanical, institutional, environmental. Somehow, through it all, the parts remain stable. Transmissions are cleared, the connections enabled. Something emerges that works, adequately does the job, unless or until something goes wrong. It's a brisk winter evening in southern Arizona, and a shadow drone is spiraling out of control. Pilot error, system failure, mechanical malfunction, software glitch? We don't know. The drone is about to plow into the earth near Fort Huachuca, about 15 miles north of the U.S.-Mexico border. And collides with the ground. The drone violently destabilizes. Its energy is cascading outward and out of control. Combustible mix of heat, engine oil, dry air, lost data sparks a huge fireball. Gathering momentum, it begins to ravage the countryside, burning across acres of land, consuming everything in its wake. Now this is a dry, forested part of the country where fires usually burn out of control. You'd think that a fire on this scale would cause a great deal of alarm. Firemen, they'd be in demand. But on this particular military base, it's no big deal. It's home to the largest drone training center in the world. Drones surrounding onto the earth here on a regular basis with little risk of environmental injury, damage, or death. The resulting explosions and fires are simulated with ease. A cavalcade of drone wrecks can be called up at will. They lie in wait, smolder in storage, as if some part of some sublime, chaotic support. A rumbling substrata of catastrophe ready to be raised. A fiery underworld on the basis of which lives get saved. Simulations are essential for training, but they're no longer just precursors to actual operations. They work hand in hand with them in real time. Some simulations can be plugged directly into ground control stations like this one. The data they gather can be integrated into actual missions in real time, even at the level of command and control. The formats of these control panels, they're all drawn from the world of commercial game. Codes, controllers, procedures, behaviors, rules, the logics are the same. Ground control stations, training simulations, video games, all part of the same domain. Combat, entertainment, entrainment. Immersed in the dynamics of the situation, however real or virtual, action emerges in a shared landscape of participation. You want to get into the flow, absorbed into the activity, responding to the situation with unfiltered immediacy. The action doesn't come from you so much through you. It comes from all around, coursing through all of the actors involved. You adjust, calibrate, acclimate, respond to discrete changes and shifts in energy of scale, all without hard and fast separations. You cease becoming aware of yourself, separate from the actions that you're performing. You become movement. The entrainment, who or what institutes it? It emerges from the dictates of a developing structure, but it comes from neither fully this nor that side. It's neither internal nor external to any bodily divide. The routines that emerge are very real, very material. The routines performed, they are performed. Actors come into being in the performance. Situation has its hierarchies, its scales of relevance, its expectations of how an actor should move appropriately to be adequate for the task at hand. The priorities are sometimes revealed in visible indicators of rank, but they're enforced in the protocols of the social network, the material form, the technological platform, the movements that I repeatedly perform. Immersed in the practice, I'm indoctrinated into the codes, primed into the patterns, subjected to the standards of worthiness. What is appropriate to a given circumstances? What is appropriate to a given circumstance? How do I attune to it? It courses into movement, congeals in stance and position. Evaluative orientation, posture, roles assumed to various degree, selections and alignments that to the experience deliver me. Flows are absorbed and released. Correspondences staged, constraints enacted, forms negotiated. Data is filtered, context created for information, inferences are drawn, appropriate action is output, action catalyzed. How appropriate is this action to the demands of the situation? This one must ask, how adequate is it to the task? How does the appropriateness come to be? What's its level of accuracy? The fault lurks here somewhere in this environment, and it's my job to find it. The inadequacy will be revealed in this inquiry, and it will not be me. Unmanly. Could be that my method is even more unmanned than these drones. An actor tries to be an adequate player of the game. Actors negotiate flows and correspondences, and they cultivate their own availability of the same. They try to sustain themselves and become sustainable, maintain and be maintained. In order to do this, they negotiate agreements, allegiances to the principles that govern the way things are, the way things gather, move, and behave. In the constitution of these agreements, everything resides. Into their nature you can delve. Sometimes the necessity of the endeavor is only revealed in the event of the failure. The crash occasions the probe. Agreements, they're programs. They provide rules around which populations of actors can organize themselves, providing bonding, synchronization, and calibration over time. Relevance, propagation, influence, intimacy. Things fall into place. The parts remain stable. Transmissions of clear connections enabled. Collective intelligence emerges for operation. Hardware, personnel, and supplies are integrated into tactical systems. Communication pathways and protocols fit together in systems. Ideas fit together into doctrines. Programs are stabilized outcomes of negotiation, but they're not rigid. They must be modified when necessary. This requires dexterity, agile attunement to the shifting demands of the situational ecology, the knowledges and skills that it might require. In the distributed network of the unmanned system, intelligence migrates into unlikely sources, even spaces and things that might have been formerly thought to be inert. Dynamic reorganizations happen, reorganizations of skills, abilities, hierarchies, divisions of labor. You might think that agency you might see it consolidated into a discrete form, but that's not fully the way things are. I am here, but all the piloting functions are not consolidated in me. They're part of me, and so partly I'm somewhere else. The piloting function, in both its distribution and embeddedness, it's important to see. The features and functions of piloting distributed across and embedded in new clusters of Agent C, bodies, bound and unbound. It's threatening and even sometimes violent, the reorganizations. They don't always align with the conventions that have defined previous generations, the priorities, formats of adequacy, traditionally known, embodied in figures, ideal figures like the hero, the wandering knight, the noble warrior. In order to be an adequate player of the game, an actor has to realize when the rules of positions have changed. You have to attune to the codes, energies, and priorities of the situation. Listen to what it's telling you. The drone is a figure for a reorganization of the adequacies of man. Listen to what it's telling you. You may not like what it says. I'm a member of the American Buddies Border Patrol. Most of us used to work in the military and security industries. We're an NGO, a non-governmental organization. We help assist the Border Patrol in the detection and apprehension of illegal immigrants. We provide a valuable public service. We just began flying our own drones along the border. These drones, the wave of the future. There are many advantages. Drones are not hampered by the physical and psychological limitations of humans. They can easily take on jobs that are dirty, dangerous, and dull. They can stay aloft and persist on targets much longer than piloted aircraft, and far less crossed. The human risk factor is greatly reduced, at least on our side of the border. Drones do crash. They rarely result in injuries and death of the crews. Our drones act as force multipliers, adding to the limited capabilities of the Border Patrol in patrolling the entire border stretch. These drones are pretty good. Electrical optical systems on a drone like the Global Hawk can identify this object in my hand from an altitude of 60,000 feet. Drones can survey tens of thousands of square miles a day. They've helped intercept thousands of pounds of illegal immigrants and drugs. At the same time as we assist the Border Patrol, we act as public watchdogs, guarding against governmental cover-ups and abuses. That drone that crashed, who do you think was flying that drone? The U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They have their own drones. Our drones are more effective. They don't crash as much. And while the government's transmissions are secret, veiled in secrecy, we stream all of our video footage live, directly to the public. You, the public. Here's documentation of our inaugural flight. I'll tell you a secret. That's us. We needed to ensure that our drone proved its effectivity in spotting actual living people. Some members from our organization, we dressed up as Mexicans and we went down there. We crossed over. We became ourselves illegal border crossers. We had to mimic the very people we aimed to capture. We had to pass as the pursued. We became alien. Crossing over was thrilling, an unexpected surprise, like getting away with a good disguise. But our buddies who manned the optics, they were not aware of this pleasure. They could not be secure as they were in their platforms of mastery. We were displaying the targets for them, displaying as targets, but we were them. Their correspondences reflected, extended, and propagated in the scopes.
The Magnum Force Velociraptor is a rugged and reliable small unmanned aircraft system targeting the needs of law enforcement and public safety professionals.
We have a suspect cornered. Bring on the drone.
The packaged system fits easily in the trunk of a car and can be assembled and operative in less than 5 minutes. The drone provides a rapidly deployable eye in the sky, transmitting live video directly to the operator at a fraction of the cost of manned aircraft. Following the overwhelming successes that drones have demonstrated in military operations overseas, our company now aims to make them an increasingly common sight within our national borders. The Magnum Force Velociraptor is the first solution that specifically targets the public safety market. We've got your safety in our sights. The Magnum Force Velociraptor costs just a bit more than a police patrol car, making it a much less expensive alternative.
That drone that crashed, it crashed into my backyard. My dad was mad. He was going to call the Department of Homeland Security to tell him off, but he didn't want to seem like he's soft in national security, so he backed off. My friend down the street, he's into RC planes, but his stepdad, he doesn't like him. So we build him in my garage, and we fly him around the neighborhood. This here is in a field that we made into a drone airfield. We have our competitions here. We have a big one coming up next week. I'll win. As far as this airfield goes, I rule. We formed a local fly-up group on the DIY, the do-it-yourself drones website. The stats from all of our competitions are documented there. Mine are all ranked high. In fact, I need a new profile pic. It's hard to get both me and the drone posed right in the picture. I like the first-person shooter style view, but I also like to be in the picture. I like to show off my drones. Gets me a lot of attention. I call this one the chick magnet. Yeah, the flight pilot, he's a cool dude. So is Hacker. And I'm also on the drone hack site. Yeah, that drone that crashed, that could have been hacked, Maybe by one of the cartels just over the border, protecting the smuggling routes. Drones are really vulnerable. A lot of the software and electronics are off the shelf. The GPS signals they rely on are weak and easily interfered with. So are the electromagnetic waves generated by computers, radio signals, and other electronic stuff. Jam signals can cause engines to shut down. Some jamming signals have even come from mysterious sources that have never been identified. The whole thing about DIY is coming up with the one simple solution that nobody else thought of. Yeah, the pilot, he's a cool dude. The hacker, bringing down a drone, flying a drone. Either way, kick ass. You can be the underdog who sweeps in to score, the resurgent rebel fighter who zooms in just in the nick of time to shoot down the oppressor and get the girl. Yeah. It's not that I'm an advocate of crime. Most important for me is to act honorably, fight for what I think is right. Something worth defending, something I believe in. I'm not sure what that is, though. But I'd defend it if I knew. I'd defend it if my honor was at stake. I'd do it for my girl if she hadn't left me. Just look at this empty airfield. No infrastructure, no upkeep, nothing. Just dirt. It's really nothing without the pilots, planes, and spectators that it assembles. Not sure why it fascinates me, really. I have bigger fish to catch. I guess it reminds me when I was a kid with a big imagination. Out of an empty airfield in the middle of nowhere, we created a busy airport. Our planes, they soar to the earth. This drone airfield, platform for flights, mortal and digital, horizontal field of assembly for the actors who come to create it part by part, participate in the forces that it congeals and the things that it sails. This drone airfield, existing in the middle of what comes and what goes, what lands and what takes off, it could be a harbinger of sorts, a preview of things to come, A symbolic preview of what drone airfields might look like someday when aircraft are no longer flown in the usual way. There's no command tower presiding over the runway, no eye-line optics, no lighting tracks guiding the way. A distributed and windowless drone requires no sight line for its flight, no optical trajectory for its might. Geometries of seeing are replaced by networks of sensing. It's not about an interior-exterior relation, at least in any kind of conventional sense. There's no orchestrated containment, just interfaces absorbed into the environment, facilitating flows and correspondences among networked and embedded actors. The drone, is it a figure for a reorganization of the structuring principles of the modern world? If there's a self, it's not defined by reduction and repression. It's not defined by closure, poised between something lacking and what can be gained. There are no external objects to drone desire, no counterparts, only internal parts. The motivation is not to possess, but something on the order of an address. In my pursuit, I think I've wanted to capture something of the drone, to master it. But it could be that I just want to be taken by it, to submit to it. I don't want to go where I'm not, but where I already am. But I'm not looking for me. Zones of contact opened. Objects not defined by personal objects of attraction. Identification receding. External agencies met without preconceptions, preoccupations, rules. Composition over imposition. Negotiation over demand. There's no denying the fact of this hole in the ground, this displaced dirt. The site tells its own story. The crash occurred here, in this backyard. The crash was marked, its impact was marked on a very specific spot of the earth, just over the border with Mexico. A stretch border along which drones flown by both countries flown. Their economies are only seen when they go down. Drones plunge into a public arena that otherwise would not be recognized. All kinds of actors come into this scene. Some conventional state and corporate, some not, some opponents, some proponents, all operating in various degrees of legitimacy and visibility. In the expanding global industry of drones, domestic space is the new frontier. Security and law enforcement, border policing, pipeline monitoring, geological surveying, livestock tracking, traffic controlling, crop dusting, flood mapping, cartel spotting, signal jamming. The global and regional economies of drone production paint a very different picture of the world when we keep open the displacements that this crash has wrought. But the whole is already beginning to harden. The fortifications firmed up. The force multiplying factor of the drone is said to draw a harder line in the soft desert borderland. But the line is already beginning to harden. It's already breached by the flows of weapons, people, narcotics, goods, much of it driven by U.S. demand. Within what economies has this drone crash been embroiled? Who funds its operations? Who accounts for its failures? Was it brought down by a faulty deal, a political maneuver, a criminal act, a strategic hack? The renegade agency that undid the machine might be buried deep within its apparatus. The largest plane in the military's arsenal, the Global Hawk, was once brought down by a small faulty part. The crash investigation revealed that the plane's rudder had become loosened during a previous mission. Its malfunctioning was unfortunately not detected during routine maintenance checks, and during the fatal flight, it suddenly began flapping uncontrollably. The rudder's persistent, chaotic flapping was enough to destabilize the entire plane. A small, excessively flailing part was enough to destabilize a mammoth aircraft and send it plummeting to its death. Failures of the Global Hawk are not uncommon, you know. The military had lost just 2 of them before this particular episode. The first one was due to a very simple input error. The plane was programmed to taxi at the wrong speed. It was programmed to taxi at 178 miles per hour. The second error was due to a simple operator input. The crew mistakenly engaged a self-destruct code while the plane was aloft. Oops. As the hulking vehicle rumbles through the sky, resembling a strange sea creature, an enormous head with no eyes, and a featureless, smooth stretch of luminous skin, the rudder swerves back and forth at the ass end, lodged within the fin. Behold its smooth contours. Savor it for its abilities to harness the properties of moving air, to maximize the exchanges between a fluid and the solid bodies that move through it. At its core, the rudder is rather dumb. It's simply a control platform, a surface that awaits control. The control is provided by an actuator. The actuator is a motorizing device. Here, it is a motor that drives the control surface of the rudder. The rudder is attached to its output hub and secured in place with hinges. At its most basic scale, the rudder's job is very simple. It simply moves back and forth along a precisely determined range of motion. When we move up in scale, the movement stays the same, but the task changes. At the next level up, the rudder's job is to change shape of the entire tail end surface, and therefore vary the amount of force that it generates. At the next level up, the rudder's job is to change movement of the plane about its vertical axis, to change the horizontal direction in which the nose is pointing. In order to do these jobs, the rudder actuator combination cannot function alone. It must work in combination with the plane's other control surfaces. The control happens across a number of scales. The fuselage is a platform whose aerodynamic features are altered by the movements of smaller platforms such as on the tail and wing. The propulsion system is a large-scale actuator whose movements affect the action of the fin. I affect the action of this object as I press it forward in the service of demonstration. The overall cooperative job is to provide stability for the aircraft, to keep it straight in flight, or to provide stability for the argument, to keep it right. In order for my demonstration to fly, the platforms must comply. In order for the platforms to do their job adequately, the actuator must drive them effectively. I must motorize my platforms well, and if they rebel, I must bring them back in line. Hopefully, I'm an actuator who knows his hand, is worthy of taking command. The actuator assumes command based on the control signals that it receives. It converts these control signals into physical actions. Its ability to control its platforms well requires that it receives informed operational commands, commands that are informed by the relevant contextual data. Environmental conditions must be sensed and interpreted. Environmental states changes must be detected and measured. Information processed by the flight's computer, and the necessary information exchanged by transmitters and receivers. Many actors are brought into play in assembling the most relevant operational commands. Operational crews and teams of actors involved with launch and recovery elements, maintenance and logistical support, command and control, imaging, processing, and dissemination. The relevant data, once assembled into coherent control data, instructs the actuator to drive their platforms accordingly. The plane is stabilized and steered. Its relative position, speed, and altitude adjusted in accordance with this instruction, and hopefully a cohesive flight is produced. The components of the unmanned system function at different levels of scale and organization. The output of each level provides units of assembly for the next level up. Data can be processed correctly at one level but processed incorrectly at another. A small-scale inaccuracy might be to blame, one that altered the measurements provided by a controller, required by a controller. One contingent fault might lead to another, cascading up to affect the overall levels of the system. The overall performance of the system may be compromised. Small-scale fault can lead to the large-scale failure. The fault could be located in the agency of the actuator's command. It could be located in the signal sent to it. Even if the instruction was correct, it could have been disrupted or jammed. The fault could be located in the instructions themselves, in the programs through which they were mobilized, or in the agency that programmed them. The fault could be located deep within the mechanism of the actuator itself. No matter how stable or correct, it could have responded only partially or not at all to the instructions sent to it. When does fault become failure? There are no hard and fast boundaries, but there is a transition point. Failure comes when a fault scales up to cross a critical threshold. So, what then? It's a matter of developing a control system equipped with an adequate degree of robustness to fault, a matter of maintaining stability against instability sufficient for a span of time, not by its elimination, but by its effective modulation. Turbulent underpinnings modulated. Turbulent underpinnings stabilized rather than repressed. A negotiation with the unruly.
The component is probed, the system put to the test. The trial begins. The ability of a test to adequately detect fault is due to the enduring relevance of its features, assumptions, and procedures. It's due to its durability within changing conditions, including unforeseen behaviors and environmental shifts. The ability of a jury to adequately detect fault is due to the enduring relevance of its features, assumptions, and procedures. Its standards of truth, hierarchies of relevance, scales of worth. The actor is probed, the explanation is put to the test. The trial begins. The actor is subject to external forces, to the environmental stress placed upon it, at various frequencies, levels of complexity, and scales of endeavor. Forces of temperature, mass, and vibration conspire against it. How much can an actor take before it fails, decouples from its job, spins out of sync?
Our number one manning problem in the Air Force is manning our unmanned platforms. We need about 170 personnel just to keep one Predator aloft for 24 hours. A Global Hawk requires 300 personnel. We're short of ground-based pilots and crews to fly the planes, technicians and mechanics to maintain the aircraft, intelligence analysts to scrutinize the non-stop video and surveillance feeds, and audiences to accept what we do. Unmanned system, my ass. We need men, more men, good men. Civilian contractors are beginning to take up some of the slack. They've been involved for logistics and support. We're now tasking them with the analysis of data. Without civilian personnel, drone operations will grind to a halt. But the problem is much deeper. However vigilant they may be, men today are no longer adequate, undependable, ill-equipped. Their attention spans cannot keep up with the demands. The vast amount of data that drones now absorb easily outrun the capacities of personnel. We've got cameras and sensors that are extremely sophisticated, but they're of limited value unless human intelligence and skill can be improved along with them. The task of interpreting what the drone is seeing is farmed out to specialized personnel at image analysis and dissemination sites. Like flight crews, they too are hard-pressed. A typical drone requires 19 of these analysts, processing hundreds of hours of video. A single drone, outfitted with Gorgon steer technology, requires 2,000 analysis. Through a spherical array of 9 cameras emerging out of its underbelly, the Gorgon drone can capture live video of an entire city. And may soon join the cavalcades of mythical machinery flying high over the borderlands. Mythical apparatuses that, in their combination of menace and protection, manifest hopes of warding off evil. Fantasies of impermeability, avoidance of catastrophe, immortality, turbulent underpinnings repressed. The hundreds of analysts required to interpret what the drone is seeing sit inside cavernous rooms, filtering vast streams of data, trying to discern the single telling deviance in the normalized flow. Armed with the skill of extracting data from image flows and information arrays, they attempt to organize this data into patterns from which extrapolations can be made. Databases, activated through search algorithms, become the primary repository of knowledge. History becomes a backlog of replayable events. Human personnel share the drone's perceptual and analytical capacities. We don't want to get rid of them. We want to lessen the demands made on them. We want to increase the overall intelligence of the system with a minimal degree of direct human involvement and a higher degree of precision. We are now pursuing comprehensive mission handling systems that allow drones to fly and conduct target searches autonomously. They reduce the risk of human distraction and error, as well as communication requirements between the ground and the vehicle. These systems incorporate cognitive architectures and machine learning capabilities. The parameters for the recognition algorithms need not be set in advance. The software learns from experience, internally adapting to perceived changes in the environment, detecting and classifying activity that was not even previously defined or anticipated. In order to be an adequate player of the game, an actor has to realize when the rules have changed. These systems can accommodate what's revealed in the situation unexpectedly and outside our preoccupation. They can attune to its shifting priorities, its required knowledges and skills, even in random events, unexpected and strange. They can orchestrate a non-specific zone of contact, an orientation without a predetermined object of attention. External agencies met without preconceptions, preferences, rules. Composition over imposition, negotiation over demand. We can disappear into the flow, carried forth by the activity, responding to the situation with unfiltered immediacy. We can become movement. We will have become the drone, the UFO, the alien, the body of light. The Polecat was said to be a fully autonomous system. Its prototype, however, crashed upon its unveiling. It plunged into the Nevada test range after a failure in the ground equipment caused its automatic flight termination mode to activate. This so-called fail-safe mode is designed to prevent recovery of operators. It's designed to prevent danger to civilians if the plane should deviate irrecoverably outside of its range boundaries. Once activated, it cannot be stopped. The plane descended, relinquished, blocked commands. A headless robot speeding downward into the desert night, unguidable yet precisely driven. The polecat was not rendered powerless. Its operators were. They could only watch as the drone, fully in control, perpetuated the very forces of its undoing and plummeted to earth. Perhaps the true meaning of the autonomous system can only be revealed in such a state of complete and utter inadequacy. All systems surrender, no gainful force able to counter the system-wide loss. The explanation flew. The story did not concern itself for the location of the fault, whether it lay in human error or technological malfunction. Concerned itself with the reliability of the flight termination software, the adequacy of the program. It performed exactly as expected. This downed drone, smoldering in a cloud of smoke and dirt, a sight to behold. A twisted geometry of unmasked roles, the stories forgotten and told. The component parts that were released by its earthly slam were only provisional platforms, composites of substances, agreements, and commands. They're not just parts but practices, consolidations of dispersed functions, unfolding at various scales, magnitude, and spans of endeavor. Their geometry is abstracted and open in the event of their collision with other actors of more permanence, capability, and force. Erupting into everyday life, they inform one another, exchange features, and negotiate outcomes. They cultivate stabilization and endurance, recovery and recurrence, relevance, influence, and intimacy. Opened up in a spray of oil and dirt, burnt carbon and wire, salvage rhetoric and recovery operation, they now offer themselves to affiliation. Our crew also has to walk. Dinner. Hi.
It's excellent.
Hi. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Oh, sure.